Where does your favorite NFL team's head coach rank entering 2023? What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here, back with another NFL rankings video. And in this video, I'm ranking every NFL head coach entering the 2023 NFL season. That means number 32, the worst coach in the NFL, all the way to, in my opinion, the best coach in the NFL, number 1. But first, Gronk, spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more NFL rankings just like this. And also, let me know in the comment section below where you would rank your favorite team's head coach. Let's go. My NFL head coach rankings for 2023 at number 32, Jonathan Gannon of the Arizona Cardinals, the new head coach of the Cardinals, the former defensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles, led one of the best units in the NFL in 2022. But my biggest question about Jonathan Gannon is, does he have the charisma, the leadership capabilities to lead a full NFL franchise? Because personally, I had enough questions about his defensive strategy, his defensive scheme over the past couple of seasons with the Philadelphia Eagles, and it was a very quick rise when it came to Jonathan Gannon. Now, the Eagles did have a very good coaching staff, and they did have a great season in 2022. There's no doubt. And Jonathan Gannon led a very good unit. They put up historic numbers for sacks. All that's great. But he had a lot of talent in Philadelphia, and you could clearly tell that it was more talent than scheme. And then when you watch him talk to the media, talk to his players, I'm just not sure he has the it factor as a head coach. Now, time will tell. There's definitely going to be a bit of a rebuild period for Arizona, so I'm going to give him time to breathe and grow, but I definitely have a lot of questions about Jonathan Gannon as a head coach in the NFL. At number 31, Shane Stechien of the Indianapolis Colts. Now, the biggest reason Shane Stechien is only at 31 is because we've never seen him coach in the NFL as a head coach. But I do think I have a lot more promise or intrigue when it comes to Shane Stechien than I do his counterpart from Philadelphia, Jonathan Gannon. I felt his ability to get the most out of Jalen Hurts, put young Jalen Hurts in a system and a support scheme that actually got the best out of him as a young player, allowed him to grow, allowed him to play with confidence. That's exactly what you're looking for in a lot of coaches today. There's only so many coaches in the NFL that can be an overseer and brilliant in all aspects of the game. But if you can find somebody like Shane Stechien, who seems to be very good with quarterbacks. He worked with Justin Herbert, ran an entirely different scheme than he did with Jalen Hurts. And despite there being some talent in those situations offensively, I think his play calling, his creativity, and his relatability with two entirely different quarterbacks is definitely there. So I'm intrigued to see what he can do with Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis and how he, as an offensive mind, will be able to lead the Colts into the future. At number 30, Demeco Ryans of the Houston Texans. Demeco Ryans becoming the Houston Texans head coach is absolutely perfect. I mean, I grew up on Demeco Ryans as the middle linebacker of the Houston Texans, and I was really a fan of Demeco Ryans as a player. And obviously Kyle Shanahan saw his brilliance when it came to defense in Houston when he was the offensive coordinator there. He brought Demeco Ryans to San Francisco initially as more of a linebackers position coach. He becomes the defensive coordinator after Robert Saleh leaves, and I felt he really did a lot of things to elevate that scheme. He made it more diverse. I thought he was more creative with his usage of players. He was a little bit more aggressive with blitzes and man coverage and things of that nature. And I felt he made that scheme a lot more complete. I think coming to Houston, I have a lot of faith in him as a leader. You can tell that this guy was born to lead men as a middle linebacker, as a player at the NFL level, as a Pro Bowl caliber player. He led the Houston Texans defense. He led one of the best, if not the best defense in the NFL in San Francisco the last couple of seasons, and he's seen great players. So I feel like he will be a very good leader, and he also has a very good sense right now for defensive football in the NFL. At number 29, Dennis Allen of the New Orleans Saints. Dennis Allen, I think, is a really brilliant schemer on the defensive side of the football, and I thought he was one of, if not the best, defensive coordinator in really 2019, 2020. And then he was announced as the head coach to replace Sean Payton shortly after. And we've always had our questions about Dennis Allen when it comes to head coach material. He's a very good defensive coordinator, but not all coaches are made to be a head coach. And I definitely feel he has an edge to him, a toughness to him, like a little bit of an old school nature that I appreciate. But I do wonder if he's just better off being the defensive coordinator, because I don't think he has a great sense for offense and that side of the football. And given that offense is such a big part of today's game, it's really hard for me to say that he's a great coach. When you look at his resume so far in 2 different locations, and it hasn't exactly been great. Now, he's been a little unlucky, and I'm willing to give him more time here, and so are the Saints. But I certainly have my questions on whether or not he's just simply a very good defensive coordinator. At number 28, Matt Eberflus of the Chicago Bears. Matt Eberflus had his first season as the Bears head coach last year, and I felt it was a bit up and down. I think he's really good when it comes to being a coach that can coach the fundamentals and coach a very simplistic scheme, but it's also a very translatable defensive scheme. So that's what I like about Matt Eberflus. I feel like because he's so good with fundamentals, he's very good with understanding the base level of defense, that he's able to go to any team with pretty much any kind of roster or talent pool, and he can put together a formidable defense. And he's a pretty good schemer week to week and adjuster as well. And I think that defense is going to grow with time as he does get a little bit more talent in Chicago. Where I am a little bit worried about him is his disconnection from offense. Very similar to Dennis Allen. I'm not sure his sense of offense, his sense of the quarterback position. I do feel he hired some pretty good people on that side of the ball. And I do think that he has a presence to him. I definitely feel like he's not like the most strict guy in the world or doesn't have that super obvious edge like a Dennis Allen has, but he definitely feels like he has that leadership quality that men will follow him. So I like him in the sense that he's still growing as a head coach, but he did some very good things as a defensive coordinator, and I do get the sense that he will be better in 2023. At number 27, Todd Bowles of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Todd Bowles is a very tricky coach for me to rank. I very much like Todd Bowles as a human being. I very much like him as a defensive coordinator, but I certainly have my questions on whether or not he is a big enough personality to lead a team as a head coach. We saw it in New York. He was always kind of mellow and laid back. And he's such a drastically different human from Bruce Arians, who's more kind of not arrogant, but I would say a little bit out there, a little bit loud. And Todd Bowles is way different. And I definitely feel that hurt the Bucs. The Bucs did not respond the same way, felt like they weren't motivated the same way. Obviously, they always struggled with the details under Bruce Arians, and they still have that problem under Todd Bowles. But it almost felt like Todd Bowles leaned into some of the aspects of the team that weren't exactly the best. He didn't have a good understanding of what made the Bucs successful, which in my opinion was their explosive passing game, was their Tom Brady presence, the offense, and he kind of tried to lean into power game, defense, and obviously things that he believes in, but not necessarily what the Bucs are actually good at, which is always a problem for me with any coach, is leaning into what he believes and not what the team is actually made to be. So that's a problem. On top of that, he has not had a lot of success in the NFL. He certainly was disappointing with Tampa Bay in year one after what they did. But I do believe that part of that is some of the regression from the talent around his roster. I just think he needs a really good offensive coordinator by his side to be successful. We'll see if that comes here soon, but he's going to have to prove it really quickly or else he's going to be out again. At number 26, Brandon Staley of the Los Angeles Chargers. For a coach that took his team to the playoffs, this does seem very low, and I have been high on Brandon Staley. Initially, when he got the job in Los Angeles, I felt that was a good hire because with his background, you saw a guy that was a very smart and good kind of forward thinker at the defensive side of the football. And he did a lot of things that I felt was very much now for the NFL. A lot of two safety coverages, taking away the deep passing game, forcing offenses to work the ball down the field. And with the talent he had in that defense, I felt he maximized it and he did a great job. And they were the number one defense in LA this season that he really took the helm of that defense. But at the same time, he had a background where he was an offensive guy and he actually was a quarterback guy. So it felt like he would be able to come in to Justin Herbert with that offense and be able to kind of be a overseer and do both. And it just feels like as his defense has, yes, gotten injured, he hasn't taken a grasp of that side of the football and truly taken over and established his identity of what he's wanted defensively. They have not been able to stop the run. They've been extremely inconsistent on his side of the football, which is not a great sign. And then you add everything into that when it comes to his decision-making skills, some of his over-aggression at times that he's been heavily criticized for. And then even when you strip that away, last year he made perhaps the worst decision of any coach in football when he decided to play his starters in week 18 before the playoff game. That ended up losing Mike Williams in the game to injury and, in my opinion, heavily contributing to them losing in the wild card game when they were up drastically in that football game. So Brandon Staley, yes, has had some good moments. He's actually progressed this franchise towards winning. But at the same time, you have to wonder if that is more to do with Justin Herbert, the talent on the roster, than it really has to do with what Brandon Staley has brought, because he has brought a lot of negative. At number 25, Robert Saleh of the New York Jets. I've been pretty vocal about my kind of lack of understanding for the hype of Robert Saleh. I understand that the guy definitely has the personality, the bravado, and the presence to be a head coach. First of all, I want to give the guy credit for being in shape. I think that's something that goes overlooked as a head coach. But when you look the way Robert Saleh does professionally, that brings out something in your players. You look responsible, you look consistent, you look driven, and that's great. He also is very good as a communicator, and I think he's a good motivator. So he's a good showman for the team. But I very much question his football knowledge. Like, yeah, he knows more football than me, but he's an NFL head coach. And there's very poor moments of game plans, of lack of adjustments, of time management skills he's shown in his first couple seasons with the Jets. He's lost his team's games before they've even begun. I've seen him play my Patriots numerous times now, and he's been outcoached drastically each time. I've seen him mess a game up in the fourth quarter in a way that I've never seen against the Detroit Lions. And I've seen him at the podium at times have a weird kind of vibe to him with the media where he is saying things that make no sense. So Robert Saleh, I do think right now is a bit overhyped, a bit overrated. He's about to get a lot of credit for having Aaron Rodgers on his football team, so just be prepared for that, and I'm outright saying that right now. But honestly, I don't think he's a very good coach. At number 24, Ron Rivera of the Washington Commanders. Ron Rivera is an example of a coach that at one time was a very good football coach, but I think his time has passed. I think with every season that has gone by, really since his Carolina days, he has kind of regressed. And Ron Rivera is just somebody that I think's been in the same spot too long. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. I don't know why he's still in Washington. He has not really proven anything to anybody to have that job any longer. And he's still employing some guys that are clearly past their prime, guys like Jack Del Rio on the defensive side of the football, where if he would just like open up to new possibilities and new schemes and actually adjust and move on and move forward, I think he'd be a better coach. I definitely like Ron Rivera in terms of the guy off the field, in terms of, I think he brings an edge, a toughness, an old school vibe to him that I very much like. He likes to play through his defense. He likes to run the football. His teams always seem to be tough to play week in and week out, and his teams are never kind of lacking preparation. I definitely feel like he's a passable head coach at this point, but I don't think he brings anything right now to the table in any regard that is like outstanding. I don't think he brings incredible decision making, management skills during the game, scheme. I don't think he brings an out of this world presence or leadership. So to me, Ron Rivera is just passable. While in like 2015, 2013, early in his years in Carolina, I thought he was a very good coach, and I thought he did a lot of good things defensively. Right now, I just don't see that from him, and I think his time has passed in the NFL. At number 23, Josh McDaniels of the Las Vegas Raiders. And this is going to be the placement I really believe that's going to get the most heat from you guys. And I totally get that. And obviously I have bias with this placing. And based on his head coach career, I can understand why people would have him ranked much lower. And that's perfectly fine. I get it. But to me, if I'm ranking the head coaches that I'm taking to be the head coach of my football franchise moving forward into this season for 2023, I'm taking Josh McDaniels at this spot. I think Josh McDaniels is one of the best offensive coaches in the NFL today. He's certainly in the top 5. Josh McDaniels, even if he's past his peak on that side of the ball, is still an outstanding play caller. We saw last year with the Raiders what he was able to do with different quarterbacks at the helm, what he was able to do with Josh Jacobs, making him the leading rusher in the NFL. For many people, an offensive line that was very much outmatched. He made that unit much better than the individual talent would suggest. And he was able to withstand injuries to Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow and still put up top 10, top 7 production on the offensive side of the ball with kind of mediocre to bad quarterback play at times. And then defensively, yes, they were terrible, but obviously that's not really his kind of area of expertise. He hired his buddies to get that job done, and I think it's really missing a lot of talent on that side of the ball. I think the biggest thing with McDaniel is that he has a very bad reputation in the media, and I think that hurts him a lot as a coach. I think he has the worst kind of misunderstood reputation in the NFL. And I think that's why so many people don't like him. And they don't really know why they dislike him. It's just the way the media treats him. And I think that dates back to the Denver days. And I think it also goes into the fact that he was a Patriots coach for so long. So he's kind of miscast. And I feel like moving forward, this was a situation where people didn't understand where the Raiders were at as a franchise. They were terrible with draft picks, terrible with building the youth and the nucleus of the team. And now moving forward, I think he's trying to get that on the right track. It might take another year or two, but I think he's getting there. And I think Josh is starting to get better as a leader of a football team. And we've seen a little bit of growth there from the Raiders. So I really believe in Josh, and I hope that he really has a great career moving forward. And I just hope that he can show people what I see in him trending forward. At number 22, Kevin Stefanski of the Cleveland Browns. Kevin Stefanski is a very tricky coach to rank. Kevin Stefanski, in moments, for some people, was a top 10 coach in football. I believe he was a coach of the year, and he took the Browns to the playoffs. He looked to be a very bright mind on the offensive side of the ball, a very good play caller. He seemed to elevate his quarterback in Baker Mayfield, get the most out of the running game with Nick Chubb, and do a lot of great things. And honestly, I think Kevin Stefanski is definitely a top half offensive mind in this league. I don't think he's a half bad leader of the team. I have my questions. He seems to be a little bit quiet and a little bit reserved for maybe my liking sometimes, but overall, I think the problems with the Browns have been not because of Kevin Stefanski. I think the quarterback play has been less than stellar, including last year where he didn't obviously have the opportunity to coach Deshaun Watson very long. He's dealing with that situation, which comes from the ownership, comes from the management. So that's not really on Kevin Stefanski, in my opinion. He's maybe not had the best handle of defense over the first couple seasons as the coach, where I felt like he needed to move on from Mr. Woods a long time ago. He finally did so last season. And this season, I think that's going to help him a lot because he's actually going to have an experienced defensive coordinator in there that knows what he's doing, and he can just focus on offense. And some of these coaches in the NFL are much better when they just focus on what they're good at. So Kevin Stefanski's number 22. I'm still getting a feel for him, but I think he's good enough to rank at number 22. At number 21, Kevin O'Connell of the Minnesota Vikings. It's funny because I just ranked a coach that Kevin O'Connell actually played under during his years in the NFL, and I was very, very much questioning the hiring of Kevin O'Connell last season with the Vikings. But I think this is an example of a guy that maybe he's not ready to be a head coach, but he's learning on the job, and he's in a situation that's perfectly made for him. As an offensive guy, as a quarterback first, Kevin O'Connell was able to come into Minnesota with an experienced, nuanced, detailed leader and quarterback in Kirk Cousins, where he didn't have to learn and teach, the quarterback and lead the quarterback. Kirk Cousins knows what he's doing. He's been in the NFL for a long time, has a lot of skill, talent. He can easily look at what was done in LA and translate that to Minnesota. And I think that was a brilliant hire from that standpoint. So Kevin O'Connell did great things with Minnesota in his first year. Winning 13 games with that roster, with that defense, I think was absolutely outstanding. Now, where I have to give him a little bit of a hard time is that defensive side of the football, and maybe managing the game to help your defense a little bit more. He was so offense oriented where he was really good in some instances. I thought his situational play calling was brilliant, really was. I thought his red zone play calling was brilliant. I thought his ability to maximize his skill talent on his team was brilliant. I thought a lot of the things he did on offense was really, really good. And I thought he made the offensive line better as well. But the defense, I just felt was just so bad. And he didn't really have a great understanding of all aspects and all three phases of football. And I think that's where he needs to improve moving forward. At number 20, Arthur Smith of the Atlanta Falcons. Now, this one might be a little shocking to some people that I have Arthur Smith this high, because his record doesn't suggest that he's a top 20 coach in the NFL. But I would honestly say, if you look at Atlanta's roster the last couple of years, and you said that you got 7 and 10 out of those teams, I would say that was pretty brilliant coaching. And the thing that I love about Arthur Smith is, despite him not being a super out there, loud personality, and I do have questions about him as a leader, I think what he is as a coach schematically is very, very much out there. He has an outline, he has an identity, and I think that's something that is extremely overlooked as a coach. When you're able to say, this is how we're going to play, I need these players for how we're going to play to fit in what I want to do on offense and defense. He clearly took some inspiration from Tennessee. And this is how we're going to play. And this is going to be unique from the rest of the NFL. And that is why we're going to win. I give so much credit to Arthur Smith for the direction of Atlanta's franchise. And I think Atlanta believes in that direction wholeheartedly right now. I think Arthur Smith is one of the best run designers in football, one of the best offensive run, play action oriented schemers in football today. I think that gives him an edge on a ton of defensive coordinators, on a ton of teams. I think this is about to be his best season of his head coaching career. I do have questions about his quarterback moving forward, but I think he is building a team that doesn't rely on the quarterback, and that is his goal. He's doing the Kyle Shanahan. So I think Arthur Smith is really a lot smarter and a lot better than he gets credit for what he's been able to do so far and the way that he sees the game. At number 19, Dan Campbell of the Detroit Lions. Now, I have been outspoken about how I definitely have questions about Dan Campbell, the schemer. I don't think Dan Campbell has much to do with the game plans or the offense or the defense for his team, which certainly moves him down my list a little bit and still has me questioning my ranking at number 19. But what you cannot deny about Dan Campbell is that he is quite simply one of the most brilliant culture coaches in all of football. To go to Detroit, a place that is just famous for losing, right? And then turn that around and constantly have a positive vibe and constantly be thinking the process and moving forward and getting better and progressing, no matter the record of the team, no matter the state of the franchise, no matter how many games you're losing, to be able to turn that season around last year, to be able to continue to build season after season. That's what you have to appreciate about Dan Campbell. Even if Brad Johnson might be more responsible for the offensive success, even if he doesn't have a huge hand in the defense, this guy knows how to lead a team. This guy knows how to get the most out of his players. His players adore him, and that's why he's number 19. At number 18, Frank Reich of the Carolina Panthers. I'm still a big fan of Frank Reich, despite I think him being questioned now more than ever. He was obviously let go by the Indianapolis Colts last year, but he quickly found a home in Carolina, which I think goes to show that he is a good coach, because usually good coaches, they bounce back fast, or they're kind of given a reasoning for why it didn't work in Indianapolis, and I think it was quite clear in Indianapolis why it didn't work. I think first and foremost, the quarterback position was never settled. It was never stable, and that's why they went up, they drafted Bryce Young, because Frank Reich wants a young guy that he can work with for a long time and they can stay consistent on the offensive side of the ball, because Frank Reich, his former quarterback, is an offensive mind, and he never had that luxury of building on a relationship with a quarterback from season to season to build his offense. And then I think that management in Indianapolis kind of was too slow with things. I think they were too focused on developing and getting guys and rookies through the draft. They never tried to go for it very much, if at all. So Frank Reich was kind of always in the situation of being a middling team. And when you're a middling coach or a middling record, it doesn't necessarily give you the benefit of the doubt to stick around. I think Frank Reich is a kind of underrated leader, and I think he's an underrated play caller as well. And what I like about Frank Reich is we've seen him be able to have success through the passing game or the running game from an offensive standpoint. And I think based on his hires in Carolina, he does understand the current state of the league on all aspects and all, areas of the game. So I like Frank Reich. I'm not saying he's the greatest coach in the NFL, but I certainly think that he's better than he was given credit for in his final season in Indianapolis. At number 17, Mike McCarthy of the Dallas Cowboys. Look, there is a lot of hate for Mike McCarthy. I don't really get it that much. I mean, we look at what Mike McCarthy has been able to do since getting the job in Dallas, and he's been very successful. He has been the most stable and consistent coach in Dallas in quite some time. When you really look at it, Usually Dallas, before Mike McCarthy, they were going up 1 year, down the next. Up 1 year, down the next. And the last couple of years, yeah, Dallas may be a little disappointing in the playoffs, if you want to claim that, but I don't necessarily think so. I think they just lost to a better team in San Francisco in both instances. But I feel like McCarthy overall has stabilized the team season to season, year to year. And he's been a great overseer of the franchise. Now, where I have an issue moving forward is potentially with Kellen Moore gone. He's going to be taking more kind of onus and responsibility on the offensive side of the football. So that has me a little bit concerned because I like the role that he was in as that overseer of good coordinators. Dan Quinn, Kellen Moore, all that. Now, I also will say that Mike McCarthy used to be one of the best coaches in football. I felt like when he entered the NFL as a head coach, 2007, in that range of things, leading up to winning the Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers, I felt like he was one of the 5 best coaches in the league. And he had a really good handle for offense at that time. And his hands have been a little bit off in recent years. So I'm intrigued to see what he can do with the offense with Dak Prescott moving forward. But he's been really, really solid for the Cowboys. And I think that's exactly what I can say. He's a grown man. He's an experienced coach. He's coached a ton of football games, a ton of different teams. He's seen a lot of scenarios. And that's been very good for Dallas the last couple of years. That's why he's in the middle of my list. At number 16, Matt Lafleur of the Green Bay Packers. Lafleur certainly has questions to answer moving forward. Like, was it all Aaron Rodgers? That's what everyone wants to know. Is Matt Lafleur actually that dude with that record from the first couple of years of his career? Or is he simply just a guy that rode the coattails of Aaron Rodgers' MVP seasons? And I don't know. Personally, I think he's a pretty good offensive coach, a pretty good offensive schemer. He certainly brings a creativity and a current Shanahan-like vibe to his offense that seems to be trending across the NFL that Lafleur has very much perfected and I think's been successful. He understands what he wants to do offensively. Run the ball. Play through the running game. You're going to hit big plays down the field off play action. He has a really good sense for quick timing, RPO game as well, and then screens off of it. I feel like Lafleur has a very good foundational offensive scheme. How will that operate with a young quarterback in Jordan Love? Can he continue to develop guys like Christian Watson on offense? And will the offense still be successful post Aaron Rodgers? Defensively and special teams have definitely been some of the areas where I feel like he's been a bit overrated in terms of he's always just been the offensive guy. And I don't think he's had a lot of pressure to be the overseer of the Green Bay Packers. And a lot of the success has been due to Aaron Rodgers. And there has been a defensive disconnect, a special teams kind of disorganization over the years. That was fixed, but that was mostly due to bringing in a very experienced special teams coordinator. So I think Matt Lafleur, the reason I don't rank him higher is he's very much reliant on other coordinators, other position coaches. And a lot of the great coaches don't really need that all the time, right? Because they have a great sense for all of the different areas of the game. But LaFleur's growing, and I think LaFleur is getting better. And I definitely feel like LaFleur is a pretty good manager of the game, and he's definitely great at flowing through his offense and stabilizing the game that way. And then I think he's growing as a leader as well. So LaFleur has a lot to prove, but I think he's done enough already to be in this spot. At number 15, Mike McDaniel of the Miami Dolphins. Mike McDaniel, very similar to Matt Lafleur in my opinion, is very much an offensive-oriented coach, and he is pretty much the head coach, but offensive coordinator in disguise for the Miami Dolphins. And what I mean by that is he's the offensive head coach. He's hired Vic Fangio to be the defensive head coach, and therefore he is coaching in a way that is a little bit different from the traditional head coach. He is the guy that runs the offense, and he expects Vic Fangio to be the head coach of the defense. He doesn't touch the defense. He lets him do whatever. So He delegates that task. And it's not a traditional role that we've seen for many years in the NFL. But he's a very good offensive coach. So you have to place him, understandably so, fairly high based on the production he's brought to the offense, the understanding of identity that he's brought to the offense, speed, home run capabilities, what he's been able to bring to Tua's game and how he's been able to maximize Tua's game. And then I think he also has a very unique personality. Is he a little odd? Is he a little kind of strange? Is he a little nerdy? Yeah, but I think it works for him, and I think it works for his team. So as long as that continues and he continues to evolve, because teams and defenses are going to adapt to what he's done on offense, as long as he continues to do that, he will be a good coach in this league. I just think you always have to dock him for basically being a glorified offensive coordinator. At number 14, Sean McDermott of the Buffalo Bills. Sean McDermott, I think, is one of these coaches that right away made a major impact on the Buffalo organization. I think he brings a great presence. I think he's a very good leader of men. I think his team believes in his message, and I think clearly he's been able to evolve with the league. He's been able to be a defensive coach that's also had an eye to offense and understand that for his team to win, they have to be a passing team, an aggressive, very much kind of analytical team. And I think he's done a very good job of being open-minded. But I think what's also hurt him is he's lost what kind of made him, and he's trying to get that back. He's trying to get back his toughness. He's trying to get back the edge of the Buffalo Bills. He's trying to get the run game going. He's trying to bring a defensive mentality to the team that has been lost. And I think that's been really puzzling for him. And I think with Sean McDermott, he's been a very solid to good coach, but he has not proven himself on the big stage. He's constantly been out-coached in big games. He's constantly been out-schemed on his side of the ball in big games. Now he's going to take on more onus on the defensive side of the football, being the play caller. So we'll see how that goes. I think he's been a very steady guy, very solid, obviously brought a lot of success to Buffalo, but he has not hit that next level. So that's why he's at number 14. At number 13, Brian Daboll of the New York Giants, the current coach of the year in the NFL. That obviously brings some respect to the table for being number 13. And although it's only been 1 year, I have to say Brian Daboll is already one of the best coaches in the NFL. And I think it's easy to say that when he's had so much experience as an offensive coordinator, as a position coach, under so many other great coaches like Nick Saban, Bill Belichick, Sean McDermott. So he's had a large kind of vision and capability to take from so many other people and what they do well. And he's kind of crafted that into his own identity as a head coach. And I really, really, really like Brian Daboll's style. I think he's purely, genuinely himself as a personality. But I think that is very good. Like he's got this kind of like fun vibe to him, but he's also got like a down to business, detailed oriented teaching style. And then at the same time, I think he's a brilliant play caller. He's really able to maximize all of his different offensive positions. And I think he's one of the best offensive minds in football today. And I think that was a huge, huge part of Buffalo's success with Josh Allen. He's been able to develop quarterbacks at a very high rate, Daniel Jones being the latest. And I think he also doesn't kind of mistreat the defensive side of the ball. He has a very good understanding of what works and what doesn't on defense and what he expects from his entire organization. I thought he just changed the culture entirely in New York, and I have to give him so much credit for that. The only reason he's not higher is because it's only been 1 year, but so far, so good for Brian Daboll. At number 12, Nick Sirianni of the Philadelphia Eagles. Nick Sirianni is kind of an outlier for me because I really don't feel like I have a great grasp on Nick Sirianni. Obviously, he's had a ton of success in Philadelphia. And I think the biggest thing that's made him successful is his ability to relate to players, his ability to be genuine with his players, his ability to be honest with his players. And I think he is so transparent. It works so well in Philadelphia. He's got this kind of arrogance to him, but at the same time, toughness to him. And I think it's very Philadelphia. And he's embraced the culture of Philadelphia. And he's had a very good ability to understand his market, his team, his players, and what he wants to be as a team. And early in that first year, it felt like he was trying to be something that the Eagles were not. He quickly adjusted. He played into the style of team, and then they just took off from there for the next year and a half. So the Eagles have just done a great job of falling under his leadership. And he's done a good job as well at delegating to different coaches at the same time as being that head coach. So I really like, more than anything, his personality and how he has been able to build a culture of winning in Philadelphia. At number 11, Zac Taylor of the Cincinnati Bengals. I have to admit that I am now a Zac Taylor fan. Took me a long time to kind of buy into Zac Taylor, because let's be honest, he doesn't exactly look the part. He kind of looks like Brandon Staley, offensive wise, you know what I mean? And then at the same time, you kind of wonder, is it Joe Burrow? You kind of question some of his play calling at times, his usage of certain players, and it took me a while to kind of get used to him. But I feel like Zac Taylor, you have to say what's been done. I mean, he's been able to come to Cincinnati, a place that, look, like Cincinnati has kind of been a laughing stock. There's a reason people call them the Bungles, okay? And I have quit the name because they no longer lose, so I'm not allowed to say it anymore. And that one commenter will get very upset with me. But Zac Taylor is a good offensive mind. And I think he set up Joe Burrow in a scheme that works for Joe Burrow. He fully understood how Joe Burrow needed to operate to be successful. He definitely has a finger on the pulse of his team, his culture. I think he allows his players to be themselves. He's very good at being a player's coach. And I also think he is not a half bad schemer offensively. And I think he's very good at delegating on the defensive side of the ball to very smart people on that side of the ball. So I think overall, Zac Taylor doesn't blow you away in any aspect, except for just his production with this team over the last couple of years and his ability to craft his own style, his own culture in a place that typically has lacked culture in Cincinnati. Entering the top 10, at number 10, John Harbaugh of the Baltimore Ravens. I used to be a huge fan of John Harbaugh. I used to feel like he was a top 5 coach in the NFL. But in recent years, I just feel like he's good. I think he's maybe not the same, a little past his prime potentially. But the one thing I will say about John Harbaugh is he's always had a great sense when to move forward, when to adapt, when to evolve. He had a great sense for that in the Joe Flacco to Lamar Jackson era, who to hire at the coordinator spots, how to improve, how to get back to being very successful after his Super Bowl tenure and run. And now it feels like he's in that state again. Okay, I got to evolve on offense. I got to change. We've got to do new things with Lamar. It's not Lamar, it's this and that. So I think he has a very good sense for that. He's always been very good in terms of preparing his teams. I think his teams always have a unique toughness, grit, edge. It's very Baltimore. It's very Baltimore Raven. It's just the identity of the team is clear. It's there, right? From the Ray Lewis days, it hasn't changed, right? It's still the same vibe of a team. His special teams is always very, very well executed, as he initially came from a special teams background. His defenses always seem to be very strong. His teams play mistake-free football, and they always seem to be in games because of the identity. Now, I will say he doesn't give you a massive edge in terms of in-game play calling or in-game adjusting or anything of that nature. But in terms of the culture he has built, his managing of personalities and players, I think he is one of the best in the NFL. At number 9, Pete Carroll of the Seattle Seahawks. In a year last year with so many Coach of the Year candidates, I felt like Pete Carroll was the most overlooked. Pete Carroll was phenomenal last year. What he was able to do moving on from Russell Wilson, an icon, potentially the best player in franchise history, and going to Geno Smith, a guy completely unproven, and having the testicular fortitude to say that Geno Smith, classified as a bust, to be your quarterback, and we're still going to play Seahawk football. We're still going to play at the line of scrimmage. We're going to play hard. We're going to play fundamentally sound. We're not going to turn the football over. We're going to run the football. And yeah, Geno's going to play really well. We believe in him. That takes a lot. And what I really appreciate about Pete Carroll is he's such a great players coach. He is a fantastic culture guy. And you always wonder, like, he's a little bit older. How does he maintain that energy? How does he maintain that constant kind of like fun vibe? He feels like such a great coach to play for. I think that's why he's maintained success at the NFL level, because his players don't get tired of him. He's just constantly a guy that you want to go out there and you want to perform for. Pete Carroll. At number 8, Doug Pederson of the Jacksonville Jags. Doug Pederson was asked to come into a nearly impossible situation. Yes, he was given Trevor Lawrence, a generational quarterback, and that's obviously fantastic. But he was asked to recover this franchise, this team, this roster, create this new culture for a team that had Urban Meyer the year before. And then he won the division and took them to the playoffs. Not only was Doug Pederson able to entirely recreate promise, culture in Jacksonville, but he's a Super Bowl winning coach. He's a phenomenal offensive play caller. He is one of the best in football, and I don't think he gets enough credit for it. He clearly has a vibe to him that is a little bit arrogant, but it works for him. Like, he makes decisions on 4th down that maybe not everybody would, but he believes it, and so his team believes it. And he has that very strong inner belief that kind of radiates throughout his roster, his franchise, his culture, that if Doug Pederson thinks we can do it, if Doug Pederson thinks we can compete with this team, thinks we can come back against the Chargers, thinks we can do this, then everyone believes it. And that is a quality of a coach that can't go overstated whatsoever. At number 7, Sean Payton of the Denver Broncos. Yes, Sean Payton is back, and he's back in my head coach top 10. Sean Payton is one of the greatest coaches of all time, and I want to outright say that right now. The question is he still one of the greatest coaches of all time, or has he lost a step? Will he be the same guy? There's a lot of pressure on him, and I think he loves that. What I love about Sean Payton is in moments of pressure, he always steps up, he always has a new wrinkle, he always has something to prove to people, and he always performs with a chip on his shoulder. I love that Sean Payton is so competitive, and on top of that, he's extremely detailed. I think he's a brilliant coach, and more than anything, I think he is a brilliant teacher. I think he's so good at teaching quarterbacks and the offensive side of the football and setting up plays and play calling. And also, he still has that old school mentality of wanting to run the ball, wanting to be a defensive team, wanting to win at the line of scrimmage. He is such a great coach in almost every aspect that you ask a coach to be great. At number 6, Mike Tomlin of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season. Everyone says that all the time, but really just sit here and think about that statement for a second. How many great coaches in the history of the game are there, and how many great coaches have had a losing season? Pretty much all of them. And Mike Tomlin has been coaching the Steelers since 2008. Now, what I will also say that's great about Mike Tomlin is he is perhaps the greatest personality manager in the game, period. Like, his ability to manage people is out of this world fantastic. He has such respect from his players, it goes without really even saying. Now, the negative with Mike Tomlin is Guys, he has not won a playoff game since 2016. So I can't rank him in my top 5 without that success, despite going through multiple quarterbacks and a change in the franchise and all that. And he's had some issues with his roster, and he's been able to elevate players that you didn't think he would be able to elevate, certainly. But still, he has not been very successful when it matters, where it matters, since 2016. Entering the top 5, at number 5, Mike Vrabel of the Tennessee Titans. Mike Vrabel is probably the best coach, that is the most underrated coach in the NFL today. I think Mike Vrabel is a lot like Mike Tomlin. They have a great presence to them. They are great leaders. Mike Vrabel has been more successful as of late in the playoffs. Being a team without an elite quarterback that's had so much success with a clear, obvious identity, toughness, edge, grittiness, running the football, defense, managing the game. And what I really see from Mike Vrabel more than anything is he is probably the most brilliant manager of a game in the sport right now. I think he's even better than Bill Belichick. His ability to have a sense for when to slow the offense down, when to go for the big play, when to go for it, when to have a trick play call, when the details of the rules and different penalties and the nuances, you almost see him smirking on the sidelines at times because he's such a great chess player. I think that's what makes Mike Vrabel one of my favorite coaches in the NFL right now, is not only is he fantastic with culture, and despite being, not a play caller, he is just brilliant at managing games and always keeping his team in games week after week. At number 4, Sean McVay of the Los Angeles Rams. Sean McVay, I think, maybe right now a little bit underrated because last year was a little bit of a disaster for the Los Angeles Rams. But that being said, we all know what he's achieved. Super Bowl champ, numerous winning seasons, multiple Super Bowl appearances. He is kind of the young, guy that was kind of crowned very early as the boy genius, right? And what I really appreciate about Sean McVay is he is not only great schematically speaking and usually elevating offenses, quarterbacks, as we even saw this year with a guy like Baker Mayfield, and we saw that instantly, but he's also just an awesome personality. He is a little loud. He is a little obnoxious, but it works. He's just kind of almost too genuine. Like he's too loud. Like but he's kind of John Gruden-esque a little bit. And I feel like he's also just so LA at the same time. He works so much for that team, for that culture, for the players. And he, at such a young age, has been able to master not only the knowledge and scheme of the game, but also the leader aspect, which is so difficult to do at a guy that's like barely, I don't even know if he's 35. So Sean McVay, I think if he continues at this thing, he will be a Hall of Fame coach one day. At number 3, Bill Belichick of the New England Patriots. Bill Belichick is still arguably the greatest coach of all time. And despite everyone saying, oh, it was all Tom Brady, now that's the narrative, I still believe he's arguably the greatest coach of all time. And he's certainly the most accomplished head coach of all time. And I think what gets overlooked with Bill Belichick is his defensive prowess still in the game today. I think he's able to elevate defensive players more than anyone else in the NFL. We always talk about offensive play callers, offensive schemers, their ability to elevate talent on that side of the ball. I don't think Belichick gets enough credit for the guy that he's able to take undrafted or the 4th round cornerback or the kind of veteran player that he traded for, or like a Kyle Van Noy, and he makes him a superstar type player. Like, he's just able to fit everybody in a specific role in such a nuanced fashion. He understands the game. He's able to call back to so many different things. His teams are able to adjust week in, week out, schematically based on their opponent in a way that I don't think any other coach is able to do. And he is probably the best one-game planner in the NFL. But where he lost me last year was his responsibility to hire other coaches. And I think he got too much into who are the guys that he likes, who are his buddies. And he hired those guys to be in premier positions that they had nothing really, no prior evidence that they could achieve that role. And I think he got too arrogant. And at times he does get too arrogant. And I think he's definitely suffering post Tom Brady. But I think he's still brilliant. I don't think he's bad by any means. I think he's still an elite coach in the league. At number 2, Andy Reid of the Kansas City Chiefs. And for many people, Andy Reid would be number 1. So first and foremost, I must explain why Andy Reid is not number 1. Andy Reid is not number 1, partly because of my number 1, but also due to the fact that Andy Reid has Patrick Mahomes. And if you do believe that Patrick Mahomes is the greatest player in the NFL today and the best quarterback in the league, it is hard for me to justify a coach also being the best coach in the NFL when so much of the success is brought to you by Patrick Mahomes. And I really do believe it is. On top of Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, and a few other phenomenal football players that are Hall of Famers. So there's part of that. But Andy Reid, I think everyone talks about his offensive play calling, his offensive genius, and I think that was not on any further display than the Super Bowl, where he totally schooled Jonathan Gannon, a new head coach. His ability to relate to all different types of players, from free agents to draft picks to, every race and like everybody, it's outstanding. On top of that, his ability to mold all different types of players into his offensive scheme and find what they do best, I think is out of this world brilliant. He is a phenomenal game planner. He's a phenomenal play caller. He's a phenomenal sequencer in terms of his play calling, kind of setting up one play to call one play to set up the next, that type of thing. And then on top of that, he's always great with quarterbacks. He understands what they do well, what they don't do well, how to mask them from their deficiencies, how to get the most out of them. And I think there's nothing really at this point that he hasn't done or hasn't accomplished. I think he's answered all his questions. Despite maybe his one flaw still being game management, I think he's still, arguably the best coach in the game. But my number 1 coach in the NFL today is Kyle Shanahan of the San Francisco 49ers, and he has been for the last couple of seasons. I think Kyle Shanahan is the most brilliant coach in the NFL, and I think it's because he doesn't need a great quarterback to be successful. When you look at all the great coaches in the NFL, or even NFL history, it's very rare that a coach achieves what Kyle has achieved, especially over the past 4 years. When you look at a 4-year sample size of going to the Super Bowl, of going to 3 NFC championships, and the only real season they didn't was because their entire team got injured, including multiple quarterbacks. Kyle is just brilliant from an offensive standpoint. I think he's the best play caller in football. In a league where offense and play calling means so much, he's able to maximize all his skill players in a unique fashion. He has a brilliant vision for the game in terms of athletes that he wants on offense, yards after catch players. His run game is so nuanced and so detailed. And I think he's probably the best teacher in the NFL on the offensive side of the ball in terms of what he expects from certain players and why they call a play or why they do something. And then on top of that, he has a great mind for who to hire on defense, who to hire on offense, who he wants surrounding him, and what they should be doing. And I think he doesn't get enough credit for his management skills, his GM ability, and then also his defensive mind. I think he's a really good defensive mind. I don't think he gets any credit for it, but he is largely responsible for bringing in a lot of these players. So I think that Kyle Shanahan is the best coach in the NFL. Not only is he the best play caller, but he's done the most with the least at the most important position. I mean, the guy made Mr. Irrelevant relevant. And that to me is the greatest thing that any coach has done as of late. So Kyle is my number 1 coach in the NFL. Those are my NFL head coach rankings entering 2023. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to Gronk spike the like button and subscribe for more NFL rankings just like this. It's Mitch. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.